Welcome back to the show. Spin Magazine's Lip Service welcoming to the show Jim Adkins from Jim Eat World. How are you, my friend?
Kicking a whole lot of ass. Thanks for having me in.
Thanks for coming on. I love it. You're actually performing tonight. I'm excited to see you. I was telling you the other day, actually just talking about it, I think it was 2017, I saw you at the Hollywood Bowl with Incubus. That was
the last
show I saw you.
Yeah,
Great show,
yeah.
by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a great tour for us.
And Summerstage tonight, it's got to be a good feeling playing there, right?
I mean, doing a gig in Central Park was not on my bingo card when we started the band.
I think when you first started initially, it was just really all about just, you never thought that 30 years you'd be sitting here. Like,
No.
It was just like, just getting a deal maybe, making some music, playing music with friends, right?
Yeah, I mean, the loftiest goal I think we had when the band started was maybe one day we'd get to press something that we would record on 7-inch or do a gig outside of town. That was like, oh man, wouldn't it be so great if those things.
And 30 years later, we're sitting here. It's funny because you actually do your own show that I was just watching. And which do you prefer? Do you prefer being on this end of it? Do you prefer interviewing artists? Because you've had everyone on your show, by the way, from Blink to Manchester Orchestra, who you're touring with. So
yeah, I think it's just, it's just a continuation of the conversation I'd have with my friends anyway, except I'm just recording it, like just nerding out on music and writing and being in a music group that does stuff, it's just like I'd talk that way all the time, all day anyway.
Well, it's a lot about the process too, right? The process of making music, and it gets into the the intricacies of the songwriting process. I mean, I was watching the one with Mark Hoppus the other day, and just you guys can geek out about literally like how long it takes to record a song, and how many takes and all that's behind there. So, but let's get into everything. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about. I want to talk about the tour. I want to talk about the history of the band.
Sure.
Early on, it's crazy. I think maybe one of the reasons why I'm a huge fan of the band is that I didn't know that you were into all the metal that you were into growing up. So the Shredders, the Yngwie Malmsteens of the world, Joe Satriani's, who would have thought? Def Leppard, from Def Leppard to Motley Crue, I think early on. But then you got into the Pixies and Sonic Youth and stuff like that. But talk to me about those early days. Like, I think you were like 14 when you first started playing guitar, right?
I was in maybe 3rd grade when I started playing guitar. So it was younger than 14. 14 would have been like my Let's Learn and Justice for All in its entirety phase.
Right.
But yeah, my parents made me take piano lessons. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Which is never fun.
I won't forget that. It was a gift. But yeah, in the birth of MTV, that kind of made me, seeing like the Rock of Ages video where there was like a glowing sword being wielded, or Rock You Like a Hurricane with the Beyond Thunderdome babes.
The golden age of MTV.
Beyond Thunderdome babes. I just said that. Yeah, just like, or like the Reflex where there's this giant wall of water coming down. I was like, okay, I want to play guitar now. Mom, Dad, I want to take guitar lessons. And like, I just, I think I gravitated toward guitar shredder metal stuff because that's kind of the world where that was at the time. I'm really good at guitar.
The golden age of MTV, people forget it was all hair bands. I mean, obviously then, in the 90s it became grunge, but early on it was all Motley Crue and Def Leppard. You couldn't turn on the TV and not see one of those bands. So it makes sense that those were the bands that you were exposed to.
And every single one of those, like lead guitar was such a big aspect of it
right.
that like as a kid looking at that, it was like, oh man, like, okay, that's cool.
There was no song without a guitar solo.
There was no song. If you were a shredder guitar player or if you were a session sax player, you were gold in the 80s. You were gold, man. You could work. No shortage of work.
Yeah. Imagine that. Yeah, it's funny because it's funny that you mentioned that, the saxophone. Like there's so many bands that had sax back in the day.
Every song has a sax solo.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the songs back then. I'm thinking about "Hide My Heart." That was a song that I feel like had saxophone on it, right? There was so many sax songs back then.
I mean, Close Your Eyes, Throw a Dart.
Yeah.
Any song, at least like in the outro fade is gonna have a sax solo creep in.
It was either hair metal or sax solos back then. So early you start playing, and that was the music that really took to you, because that was what was exposed to you on MTV. It was the golden age of MTV. But then when did you start getting into the cooler stuff? I would guess I would say like the Pixies and Sonic Youth, Fugazi, and a lot of those bands that sort of defined who, you know, Jimmy Eat World eventually was inspired by.
For me, I guess I was into like the more metal, more thrash, kind of more, I guess, hair metal into like more aggressive thrash and like true kind of more metal, you know, like Metallica. I wouldn't put Metallica in like the hair phase of things. Although they had sort of the look for that earlier on, you know, but just everybody did, you know, so it's not, but I wouldn't, you know, they were doing something completely different. And like Anthrax was doing something completely different. Like those sorts of groups are doing like, you know. Yeah.
Even when you see pictures of Alice in Chains back in the day, they were a glam band. They didn't actually start off, you know, they were full on glam.
No, really?
You can imagine.
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't know
crazy.
that.
Yeah.
But like, I guess, just kind of getting exposed to like from the cooler, older kids and through like, you know, cousins that were older, like Fugazi. And I mean, Fugazi would be like the gateway drug into like the world I'm in now.
Right.
Because it's sort of like all of the aggression, all of the expression, all of the just wielding chaos with guitar, but in such a different direction than just technical prowess. Yeah. You know, it was like, it just cuts through everything right into like the soul of it in a way that I thought was like, it kind of arrived at the right time where I was realizing I could practice forever and never actually be that kind of a player that can just like, you know, sweep pick arpeggios like Yngwie. You know, like I will never be that kind of a player. It's like, oh, but here's something that like I can do. It's like a different it's like a different way to approach musicianship in a way, you know? It's like if you can just like lean into bending this note and, you know, bring everything that is you to that, like that's what this music is doing, and it's approachable, and you can do it right now with what you got and what you're feeling right now. And then I just kind of like, I was all in, you know, I kind of sought out more and more and more of that and got into stuff like Drive Like Jehu and, you know, all of John Reese's projects and like the
Rocket from the Crypt, another great band.
The Crypt. Yeah. A lot of the San Diego bands.
Yeah. I was going to say
for us in Arizona, that was a big influence for us because anybody going on tour from California kind of had to stop in Arizona. Otherwise you're driving for like 24 hours. True. So we got a lot of punk, of indie, of up and coming bands that would come out of Southern California, in particular San Diego.
Hey guys, today's episode of the show is brought to you by the all-new DLZ Creator by Mackie. The DLZ Creator is an adaptive digital mixer designed for podcasting and streaming, and it's what I'm using right now to make this very own podcast. What makes it so special? DLZ's Mix Agent technology takes all the hard parts out of making your podcast. It's amazing. It's easy to use. You have 3 selectable user modes from easy to enhanced to professional. DLZ allows creators to any experiences to make content of their own terms. With features like Setup Assistant, Audio Mix, Mackie has taken 30 years of audio legacy and packed all their expertise into a podcasting mixer that is not only top of the line, but incredibly easy to use. You can find out more about DLZ Creator at Mackie.com. Check it out, the amazing DLZ Creator.
Yeah, was there a scene growing up in Arizona? Was there like a scene that was brewing that you wanted? I mean, obviously, I know it's when you guys first got together, you were actually doing covers, right? There was like Metallica covers and things like you and Zach were just kicking around. When you first start getting a band and playing music, that was
more like in like seventh grade. Like, hey, dude, I heard you play drums.
Right. Do you like Metallica?
Yeah, I play guitar. Cool. Hey, you want to come over and jam this weekend? Cool. And then just set up in his room for like all Saturday and just like play And Justice for All.
Yeah.
Well, except for the Kirk Hammett parts, because I wasn't that shredder. I couldn't lead on anything, couldn't shred. But yeah, I mean, we never like rehearsed covers as a band until like later on, and then it was like face to face or no effects stuff. We never played out with any of that, but like.
But when you first start playing music, that's what you're, cutting your teeth on anyway.
Yeah,
that's just the stuff that you learn, just how to play
Yeah,
music,
exactly.
right?
Everybody starts off kind of emulating their record collection.
Yeah, exactly. And so Zach's mom was actually like your preschool teacher or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I've known Zach since preschool, and I still hang out with him. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy that you guys are all friends 30 years later. Does it seem like 30 years? We were just chatting about it before we started. I mean, we were talking about your goals, and you're like, my goal we were just thinking about making a 7-inch early on, right?
Yeah.
So do you ever think like 30 years later you'd be sitting here playing Summerstage and touring with Manchester Orchestra? Did you just think, let me just make a record, maybe we can make a living? If we make a living, that's all we really care about early on.
I don't know. It's hard to say, because I don't think I've ever thought about too far into the future. For better, for worse. I guess that's kind of what you need anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like it's sort of, when you start projecting into the future, you start putting, you got to be like somewhat thinking about a calendar. But if you're projecting too far into the future, then you're kind of building these expectations for yourself that may or may not arrive, and attaching like value to those that may or may not show up. And when you get to that future you, and it's not what you thought, and it's not, or if it is what you thought, but it doesn't do what you thought it was going to do, then you sort of start taking that gap between reality and your expectations personally. And that can ruin stuff.
Yeah, no question. Well, talk to me about the early days, being in the band, in the van, the tours early on, and what it was like just kind of slogging out versus where you're at now, because obviously the early days are always great, and it's great to think about those days. I don't know if it's nostalgic to you, or you feel like, I'm so glad we're beyond that. I get nostalgic about those days because it was some of the best days of my life early on. But
yeah, they were the right kind of days for the right time. I don't know if like 47-year-old me would be all that stoked on those days right now.
But at the moment, it was they're great memories for you, I would imagine, right?
It's a young man's game for sure. But at the time, it was like, I don't care. There's nobody here, and I'm on tour. I'm in South Dakota. Dude, look at this. This is amazing. Like, okay. Oh, can you believe this? We get to sleep on the floor at some punk house.
Right. And people forget because, emo is so celebrated now, but back then when you first started, it wasn't. And it wasn't embraced. And I don't think, obviously, bands like Green Day really, broke open the doors early on, but there really wasn't, the music wasn't celebrated like it is now today.
Nothing was celebrated.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like the level that we were operating in was so like fragmented and just all over the place. Really dedicated, really passionate people in pockets everywhere, but not like a critical mass that would break you out into maybe a more professional kind of level, a more commercial, more mainstream kind of support yourself kind of world.
Because even the bands we're talking about, Rocket from the Crypt, Fugazi, they never really achieved really critical critical success, but not commercial success.
It depends. I guess it sort of depends. I mean, like on the level of like American Idiot, no.
Yeah.
Or Dookie, no. But like, enough to get by.
If
enough
they
to
were
continue
selling
to do
50,000 records, they were happy, right?
I mean, that's a question for them.
Yeah.
There. I mean, if we sold 50,000 records back then, we'd be like, I don't know, buying boats or something stupid.
Because early on, I think it was like 93, you had only been playing for like 7 months, and then you seemed to meet people from Capitol. And it happened fairly quickly. I mean, you made a couple records, but within a couple records, I mean, that's kind of when things started to happen for you. I think it was 2000, the Bleed America record.
Yeah, we recorded Bleed American in 2000. Yeah, that makes sense. And then
It's a great story, by the way, because the Capitol years are years that you probably look back at and you think, every band back then thought if we get a deal, we made it, but not necessarily the case, right? And so, do you look back at those years with Capitol, like, you know, you have any regrets, or you're happy with the way things happened? Because it's a great story what happened with the Bleed American record, which is, for me, one of my top 5 Desert Island discs. I would put that record up there with one of the greatest records of all time. I listen to the record constantly.
Oh man, that's really nice of you to say. Thank you.
It's an incredible record. But when you think back on those Capitol years, obviously, like I said, every band was getting a deal back then thinking we made it, but not necessarily.
We never thought we made it because we had a deal. I mean, you're right. A lot of people put a lot of stock in, if only we got a deal, then we'd be just set, you know, great. Oh man, here it comes. You know, like, no. I think we were really fortunate in a lot of ways, like what I was saying before about like your, the expectations for things, like just the environment that we came up in that scene that we came up in, which was like basically friends putting on gigs for friends anywhere they could, because we were all like kids, and with the Arizona liquor laws, like there weren't places you could really play. There was no incubator for that sort of development to get to the place where things could break out, you know? And that's kind of, we were really fortunate in that, because when the Capitol thing came along, we were just like, it was a joke. You know, it was like, we're going to have some funny stories about going to LA. That was the only thing that we could guarantee ourselves. Like, this is going to be funny. Like, all right, cool. I mean, no other record labels are offering us anything, so why not? This is going to be fun.
And how did you meet them early on? Because they just started coming to gigs. Like,
oh God. Yeah. So, how much tape you have? In high school, we like when I graduated high school, you know, it was in the peak of our do-it-yourself kind of scene that with me and my friends, and it was like not uncommon to just say like, okay, I want to help put on shows for people. Okay, poof, I'm a promoter now.
Right, because you were actually promoting shows back then.
It's that easy, yeah. So me and a couple of friends decided we would be a production company, because that's poof.
This is pre-Fire Festival.
Yeah, we put on some really wonderful professional gigs for bands that at the time, like, I mean, I really feel bad for anyone we did a show for. But yeah, so we listed ourselves in Maximum Rock and Roll's Book Your Own Fucking Life as a promotion company in Arizona, which back then it's hard to explain to people sometimes, like before the
process,
internet, before the internet was the internet, right? Like we sound like,
you just
I don't even know how old I must sound explaining this to people, but like, yeah, that's what I mean, so we listed ourselves as a resource for any bands that were booking their own tours and needed help with a gig in Arizona. And this band from Colorado, who they were called Christie Front Drive, they were booking their tour to get to LA, where they were going to open up for Sensefield, and it was kind of a big deal to do that. So they called up us, and we set up a show for them, and they're awesome. They're really cool. And the show we set up for them was horrible, but it was a show as advertised. Like, okay, cool. And one of the other people that I was involved with that was also involved in like Poof, I'm a record label now, that my roommate had, who was putting out our records and said, hey, you guys are great. Would you want to do a split 7-inch with this guy's band, Jimmy Eat World? And without even hearing us, they said, oh yeah, cool. Because I mean, it was a big deal for someone to,
sure.
Like I said, one of the loftiest goals we had was just that. And I think it was everyone's goal too. Like,
just a 7-inch.
Yeah, just get your music on in a physical form.
Yeah.
And that was the coolest way to do it. It sort of is still the coolest way to do it. So without even hearing us, they said, yeah. And they kept on their tour. And there was a scout for an A&R person at Capitol that showed up at the gig, like checking out Sensefield, saw Christie Front Drive, who was one of the opening acts, really impressed with them, asked them what else they had out. And they said, well, we're going to do this split 7-inch with this band in Arizona.
Check them out.
Yeah. So he checked him out. He checked us out and showed it to the A&R person he was working for. And then I think not long after that, we had an A&R person for Capitol at our 7-band local show.
You end up getting this deal with Capitol. You end up making a couple records with them, and obviously, walk me through that, because I think honestly, 2000, when you lost your deal, it was probably the best thing that could have happened to you, because ultimately it made you, you ended up doing it yourself, which led to your Dreamworks deal, and one of the best records you made for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, the Capitol days were like, I could see how on paper it looks like a disappointment or like dark time. It would be like the VH1
behind the music,
the dark times. Right. The band was dropped. They didn't know what to do. But like for us, it was
got
just
regular jobs.
All that stuff is in the background.
Yeah.
Like from our perspective, the Capitol time really helped us. It gave us like a security to develop as a band, and it allowed us to make records and record in ways that really opened up any. It was such a great opportunity to like, okay, we can work in a real studio with professional people that know what they're doing and have great ideas. You have an idea, like you can chase that as far as you want. And that was so valuable in that time, like we learned a lot about making music and making records and writing, and we would never ever be able to do that like on our own. And it afforded us that time to like actually develop as a band and learn stuff. But yeah, like Capitol did not know what to do with us, because like, they're really good at dropping the hammer on somebody that's moving 30,000 records a week, because that's what happened back then. You could do that. They had no idea what to do with us, who had maybe a combined total of 3,000 records sold between the handful of releases we had in total. You know what I mean? Like we had no business being there to begin with, but it was great for us. So it wasn't that hard of a decision for them. Like the president of the label left, our A&R person left, like the turnover at those places has always historically been kind of high. So there's nobody left really to champion us except for the college department. And they can't greenlight anything, so it was like...
Yeah, when you lose an A&R person, you're sort of out of luck at that point, too.
That is your number one cheerleader at a record label. And if they're gone, like, you should start looking for another place to go, because... Yeah.
So 2000, you have no label, no management, and you end up kind of taking matters into your own hands and making this record and self-funding the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which again, just, before there was like crowdsourcing, and, you really decided if we pay for this ourselves, you end up being a bidding war for every label between you for that record, right?
Yeah, that wasn't the goal.
Right. But
we were just doing the natural thing that felt like, okay, yeah, cool, let's just do this.
But talk about how that happened, because obviously to go from no label, no management to doing this record on your own, Mark Trombino, to having a bidding war is pretty outstanding, actually, and it was pretty incredible how it happened for you.
Yeah, we wouldn't have been able to work that way if it wasn't Mark. Mark Trombino worked with us to make our first 2 Capitol records, and so we had a really good relationship with him. We were really good friends with him, and he knew our situation and agreed basically to work for free until we could figure it out on the back end. We come to some kind of like, fair compensation for his time,
We'll pay you one day.
Yeah. I mean, he knew we were good for it.
Yeah.
And so we just went all in, working that way. It didn't really seem like a scary thing for us to do. Like when you say it like that, it seems like, oh my God, you put it all on the line. But for us, it was just like this natural thing. Like what? Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we do this? Like, this is fun.
Well, a lot of bands would have probably thrown in the towel had they had a record deal. They've been playing around and they might have just thought, what do we do now? Right.
Like, it's like, okay, we expected this to go this way. It didn't. I guess that's it.
Yeah. We should find other bands to be in.
No. Like for us, it was like, we saw, on the ground, so to speak, like every time we come to a show, there was a little bit more people, or maybe we'd have a better opening slot for a bigger band. So everything felt like it was rising. We were able to go more places. We just made friends with a promoter in Europe that agreed to do shows for us. Oh, that's a funny story if you want to hear it.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So like, Capitol, Capitol is part of a bigger company, EMI, worldwide, at the time. I don't know if that's,
Yeah.
I don't even know if any of these
Well,
people
EMI
exist
is
anymore.
Coldplay and all. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's all,
Radiohead.
yeah.
So Parlophone. So any group on Capitol or that was signed to Capitol in America, like if it's going to be released worldwide, it would go through the EMI label,
Machine.
sister labels around the country, around the world. And we were pretty low on the radar even for Capitol. So there was no way that like any other territory was going to release our records. But we decided we wanted to go play in Europe. And this is around the time when friends of ours were playing in Europe for the first time too. And there was a German promoter that was like helping out with that because he was really into like our kind of the music that we were playing, the scene we were in, and heard us, really liked us, wanted to book us over there, and got us in touch with a couple different like indie record shops in Germany. So what we would do, and our records weren't available over there, so what we would do is go basically to the college department at Capitol, take every single promo copy of their records that they had, and then ship those to Germany ourselves, and which would get sold in record shops over there or in indie distro like outfits like Green Hill, like
Really DIY.
We were like every A&R closet. The product closet paid for a lot of rent for us, I got to say. But we would raid the product closets of every floor at Capitol of any record of ours and ship that to Germany where it would get distributed over there.
You're like, if you're not going to help us, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah. So when we showed up in Cologne for our first gig, there was like 500 people there.
Amazing.
It was crazy.
I love these stories. It's like, I'm sure you saw the documentary Searching for Sugar Man with like artists sort of huge in other markets that they never knew about, right?
Yeah, that's wild. That's so wild.
Because he was like the Beatles in South Africa.
Yeah.
And he
No
was
idea.
Like, he was like a janitor or something in the US. It's crazy. So you end up going over there and you raise money for this record, right?
Yeah. That was part of our fundraising to make Bleed American touring days.
And this is back in the day when Dreamworks was just starting. I think it was Spielberg, Geffen.
Yeah.
And
I think
Katzenberg, I think, right?
Yeah. It was just start. I think maybe like Eels had their first hit.
Right.
Like
Sure.
right when we were making that record. So yeah, I was just starting out.
And so did you know about Dreamworks? How did you, we were talking about Luke Woods a little while ago.
Yeah.
So how did you meet Luke?
Met Luke Wood because his band Sammy was
Oh, that's right, because he was a musician.
was
before,
playing at a show we did in San Diego when we were like too young to get into the bar. Like that was a fun time. Like we'd play these places like San Diego or Washington. Seattle was really bad at it too, but it was like, okay. I remember sitting out in front of Casbah being 20 and having to wait until our set time to go in and play and then get out again because we were underage. But yeah, we played with Luke's band once and just kind of stayed in touch with him. And he was working at Dreamworks at the time when we were shopping around the Bleed American record. And he was like our champion there.
He was a fan of the
cheerleader.
band from the earlier records.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you go into this record, I think it was like a year and a day or a year and a month until it came out. It sold 1 million copies. And as I said, for me, top 5 Desert Island disc.
Thanks.
Greatest record. And talk to me about the time, because it was right around, obviously it came out, the middle came out right around September 11th. You kind of had to rethink a lot of the marketing for the record at that time too.
Yeah.
Such a sensitive time, obviously, with what was going on in New York and America and everywhere in the world at that point.
Yeah, all of a sudden, our song "Bleed American" disappeared from the radio.
Yeah, I mean,
it was just it was I mean, no one really knew what was going on or what was going to happen or what, it was a confusing time, for sure, and it took a while for the dust to kind of settle on a lot of things, really, that I guess you could make an argument is still settling. But yeah, I mean, I think that we had just put in so much work, so much effort, so much expense. I mean, I don't want to, we realized that what we were doing was kind of rare, and we really wanted the work to have an opportunity to be taken in just without any kind of preconception or bias, I guess. And like, here is this thing, you should come to it with yourself and not have anything, I guess, negatively coloring that, just because it, I don't know. We wanted it to be heard.
But you had to everything had to be rethought at that point, you know, especially when you were marketing something like a record in such a sensitive time. Even the middle, the song came out, I think it was around September 11th, right? I think the video was, you released it around that time period.
Around maybe like a half a year after that. Zooming out, that's totally around.
Yeah. The song ended up doing incredibly well. It's such an amazing song, by the way.
It was the right time for a video of people in their underwear.
Right.
That's what the nation really needed, is like people dancing in their underwear. We were gonna be the ones to bring it to them.
It's funny because I just was doing a deep dive and I didn't even know that Taylor Swift actually was like lip syncing that in an Apple commercial. It's so crazy when you think about how huge she became, and
yes, she
was
did.
lip syncing your song.
Thank you, Taylor Swift.
Yeah. You got to perform with her actually. I'm sure that was great at some point, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When she was in, I forget what tour it was, but she invited me to come down and guest with her at her Phoenix gig.
Yeah, I watched that. It was great. Talk to me about the process of writing a record like that, because I was just listening to Last Christmas, which is on the deluxe version of that record. Great cover. Talk to me about the process. A lot of times when you get these inspirations, I was listening to something, it would be like 3 a.m, you wake up in the middle of the night and sweetness out of the blue, and you start writing ideas down. So talk to me about the process of writing a record like that and how that came about, because every record has a different life of its own, whether you're working with outside songwriters or, you know, everything's how it emanates. So talk to me about that record in particular and how some of those songs started for you.
You know, leading into Bleed American, we had been amassing more and more of a like a home recording setup. That had always been something that interested me. Like I like, you know, cassette format 4-track recordings of me recording like friends' bands and me making demos on my own. And that started to take off when we got our Capital money, our millions from Capital. We were able to buy a DAT tape,
which you could still be paying back for all we know, right?
Yeah. No, actually, I think we've recouped because like no one even thought of investing in us, so our marketing budget was really low. I think we're totally in the black. But yeah, I mean, we just got more and more into working on our own and making demos like just on our own. So we were able to kind of, you know, flesh out ideas pretty far by the time it would come to making a record. As far as like how the songs came together, I mean, it's a lot how they are now, in the sense that there are really no rules about it. Like it could be we're getting ready we're practicing and somebody will do a riff just absent-mindedly, and then like maybe I'll do that again. Like you never know where you're going to hear the next idea that you want to try.
Sure, yeah.
And it could be like just noodling. It could be, you know, picking up an instrument that you don't know how to play that well, and, you know, having to reframe your sense of musicianship to make something cool with it. And then that kind of starts the ball rolling. There's really no rules on how you can start an idea. But I think the real important aspect is when you discover an idea you're excited about, you got to go all in and chase that. And it could be you wake up in the middle of the night and have some sort of like idea in your head, and you got to get up out of bed and put that down.
I feel like I wrote that song because that song's been stuck in my head the last week getting ready for this. So like,
did I write that?
I'm constantly waking up in the middle of the night with that in my head. But do you prefer writing with outside writers? Do you like getting in a room with the guys in the band and just, you know?
I don't know. I mean, I've done a couple sessions with other people, and it's not really yielded anything. I think
because the chemistry between the four of you is just different, right?
Yeah, the chemistry between us and just kind of working on my own is kind of I don't know. I just need like the room and the space to like the be as insane as I am with it before it develops into something.
Well, talk to me about the tour of Manchester Orchestra, which you just finished. And it's great that you guys actually covered a song by each other to get ready for this, which is a great, really interesting marketing idea and cool idea, by the way.
Yeah, Andy and I were talking before the tour started and trying to think about things that like would be I don't know, just kind of going over tour ideas, because it was important for both of us that the whole show, the whole night is something that fans of either band think is cool. Like how we would want to approach something as a music fan was really where everything comes down to, you know, and one thing we came up with was the idea of trying to do something around the tour, like we would pick a song from each other's repertoire and cover it, and then put that out as a 7-inch. And we weren't going to tell each other what song we did until it showed up, like in the other's mailbox. I kept messing with them. I was like, "Oh yeah, almost done with your song, man. You're going to love it." It's a chance for us to highlight some local rappers. It's going to be polarizing to say the least, but you know, we're giving back to the scene.
That's funny. So yeah, you just finished the tour. How was the tour, by the way?
I think it's some of the best shows we've ever done. I think it's the best we've ever sounded. I think it's the best we've ever played. I think it's the best looking show we've ever had. I mean, if you were a fan, even casually, of us or them or Middle Kids who are opening, oh my God, Middle Kids are so good every night.
So good, yeah.
Solid.
Yeah.
Like if you were a fan at all and you come to this thing and like you don't think it was good, I got nothing. I got nothing. I don't know what else to do.
Manchester Orchestra is one of these bands that's actually influenced a ton of bands, but they're underrated, I feel like. A lot of Paris Jackson was on the show not long ago. She works a lot with them, and she toured with them. And it's one of these bands that keeps coming up that they've influenced a ton of bands. They should be even bigger than they are because they're a great band. But it's funny because I was watching some of the footage from the When We Were Young festival, and every band would talk about Jimmy Eat World as their biggest influence. So I don't know if you saw some of that stuff, but it was incredible. And such a great festival, by the way. And that, you know, it's great that that festival in particular did as well as it did because you could see how celebrated the music is now, right?
Yeah. It did feel really good to be asked to play that and to show up there and play it. It was like one of my favorite shows, I think. Like, you know, really sort of put it in perspective some of these early days you're talking about. Because it is kind of centered around a lot of I mean, for me anyway, there was a lot of the people that were involved with or around when we were starting, and we were in South Dakota playing to nobody. They were there, you know, and to think about being in front of that many people in that kind of a setting with all those other people, I was just like, oh wow, it's like, you know, not like it's the main thing you're shooting for, but it does feel good when you're seen
definitely
on that kind of level. This is nuts.
Are you a fan of any of the bands, Black Veil Brides, or any of the bands that were performing that were, you know, talking about Jimmy Eat World as the greatest band ever? Are you a fan of any of those bands, those newer bands?
There's so many bands, dude. I don't know. I just play guitar. It's tough to keep up with, but I mean, it's flattering. It's flattering when anyone bothers to put the time in to connect with something that you did, and when it's another musician, it's always extra flattering because, you know, there's that sort of psychic shortcut that you don't have to explain some things about, that they just understand, and that they would, you know, put you at the front of the line. And that is just it's an honor, really.
That's awesome. Do you mess around with AI at all? I know there's a big conversation happening around, obviously, you know, music and rights and obviously actors and stuff like that. Have you looked into it at all? Have you checked it out? Do you feel like that could be part of your songwriting process at all coming up?
I guess like in its most ideal way, it's a tool, and how you direct it is going to be like where the art comes in, like what you choose. Because eventually it comes down to a choice, you know. It's like take photorealist painters, you know, they're not out there like with their thumb looking at the horizon. Like they're using a photograph and they're making insane paintings that look like that photograph. But at some point they have to choose what the composition is, you know?
Yeah.
What picture do I want to spend a week looking at and, you know, going, nanometer by nanometer and replicating perfectly. You know, like there's a choice somewhere in that of what they want to present. Like, how do you see the world? Here it is. Like, you make that choice at some point. And I think like AI is just another thing like that. Like it's another tool to use to maybe see the world differently. But but what you put your name on and send out there is going to be like eventually like, why did you choose that? Yeah. What spoke to you about this particular aspect of this AI thing that made you want to like
use it?
That you saw the next step after, or you know, like why'd you make that choice? There's still a way to look at that. I think that is in keeping with the whole creative process. I mean, it sure can make some funny, awesome stuff though. Like Glenn Danzig bummed out in Target is like one of my favorite AI series.
And I like that you can have like, you know, Liam Gallagher singing all the Noel Gallagher Flying High, you know, bird song. You can, there's interesting things that come out of it. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it is interesting for sure. So let's talk about a couple things. At the end of the show, we always do these really funny viral moments, top 5 lists, and I wanted to get into it with you. If we could talk about Jim Adkins' top 5 best emo punk songs of all time.
Oh, man. Ugh. Let's see.
Starting with number 5.
Starting with number 5. I don't know. That's a tough question. I don't know. There's so much music rolling around in my head at any given moment to whittle stuff down into top 5. I mean, I guess it depends on, and there's also the debate. This is where my brain goes. If you haven't been able to tell if they're talking to me for an hour, like I have trouble landing the plane.
People debate these for hours. By
the way.
I mean,
what are the rules for top 5 and what are
just
emo
your top 5
and punk? Because like emo could mean these things and punk could mean these things, and then I got to order these in top 5. Like, how do they? Is it like influencing me personally, or is it historically,
or
like
version, your version?
I could spend the rest of the time talking about like debating on what this means.
Yeah, well, it's just really what you know how you feel, what resonates with you, what clicks with you.
I mean, okay, so I can't say in like level. I can't order them in level of importance, and I have to look at my hand while I'm doing it too. I mean, Fugazi Waiting Room is probably one of them, just because
great
like,
song.
oh, you can do this with guitar band, with guitar rock. Oh my God, what? Like, kind of perfect, you know?
So we'll put that at number 5.
Maybe Caress by Drive Like Jehu would be up there too, because it's similar, like, oh, you can do this. Wow. I mean, Caress by Drive Like Jehu, Do You Compute by Drive Like Jehu, Here Come Rome Plows by Drive Like Jehu.
It's all Drive Like Jehu.
It kind of is, you know.
With a little Fugazi thrown in.
Yeah, Spikes to You by Drive Like Jehu. There's 5. I think that the idea, for me anyway, personally, oh no, maybe Boilermaker by Jesus Lizard could be in there. I could take one of the spots. Dwayne Dennison, another amazing guitar player that kind of like really informed a lot of things I do. I don't know if he fits into like the emo punk kind of world. Maybe.
Yeah, I would say so.
Sure, why not? It's kind of a broad category as time goes on. But like the sorts of things, like I said before, that kind of really blew my mind about like musicianship and choices and guitar music, basically, you know, those are really important to me. This idea of wielding chaos.
Yeah, I love it. And I know I know this is going to be a tough one for you because, you know, your songs are all like your children, and literally like it's so hard to choose. But if you had to pick Jim Adkins' top 5 Jimmy Eat World songs, maybe they could be your favorite songs or just what you think your top 5 songs would be.
All right. I'm not going to think about it off the top of my head. Surviving, the lead song for Surviving is up there. Just something about it that like really is this works for me. And the fact that it's not really like a more traditional kind of structured song is always sort of a geek aspect that works for me. Maybe Polaris on Futures is up there, just because I really love how that one turned out from where it started. It kind of became, it just sort of embodied everything that I wanted it to be. Everything just clicked in a way that was like I had hoped. You set out for a place and you actually get there and it's way better than your imagination when you do. Like, that's special. What else? Maybe maybe Pass the Baby from Integrity Blues, just because that was such a, like, I never thought we'd be able to pull that off, and it works.
Definitely works.
Yeah. Like those sorts of things, like you challenge yourself and you end up someplace that's like that you surprise yourself, It's like sort of the other direction with a song like Polaris, when you have like this, I wish I could create this, and then you do. Like Pass the Baby was sort of like, oh man, I have no idea where this is going, but I got to chase this because it's an idea, and then you make it happen.
Down to our top two.
Top two. God. I mean, I think as a musician, you're always excited about the thing you just did. So maybe like Something Loud would be in that for right now, just because it's, like, it's just, you don't overthink something and just go with it. And it just, I don't know. We wanted to make something fun to play, and it is really fun to play.
Yeah, no question.
That's all you do. And
drum roll, please.
The song Integrity Blues is probably one of my favorites. Like, I don't know. It just sort of like, I don't know. It just really sums up kind of a lot of where I'm at in my adult life.
Sums it all up.
It just sums it all up. Yeah.
Awesome.
I guess.
That's a great top five, by the way. Let's talk about the tour coming up tonight, Summerstage. I think by the time you listen to this gig will have already happened, but goes all the way through September 30th. Actually, I think in Maryland the tour ends. So any upcoming gigs you're super excited about? Any cities you're excited to hit?
I mean, I'm excited for tonight for sure.
Yeah.
In Central Park, and we're playing at Fenway.
Amazing.
In Boston.
Amazing.
I mean, this tour has been nuts. We played at Red Rocks.
Greatest venue ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Like, everything is crazy. Like, the more that we do this, the longer that we do this, it's easier to find gratitude in smaller and smaller things.
Mm.
And then when you end up with a objectively big thing, like selling out Red Rocks, it just makes that, I mean, it's almost even a little bit hard to accept. It's almost a little bit hard to like really take in and appreciate, because it's a big thing.
Yeah. It's a magical venue.
And, it's rare that you'd get a chance to do that.
To go from just making a 7-inch to playing Red Rocks, who would have thought, right? That was the goal.
Not me. Not me.
Well, one last question I was going to ask you. When you hear an artist like Prince years ago covered The Middle, I mean, it's got to feel great.
Man.
It's got to be a great moment for you.
I don't really care if I ever win a Grammy.
That's it.
That's it.
The pinnacle.
That's it. That's the most, that's the highest validation I could ever dream of. And there you go.
Yeah.
Now everything else I do for the rest of my life in music is just gravy.
Is there another artist that could cover one of your songs that would it be Fugazi or a song like that? They'd be like, all right, well, this is, if I'm not going to win a Grammy too, this would be another artist that I would think would be.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There's kind of just one Prince.
Prince is really up there. Yeah. I mean, It's hard to top that, really. But maybe there's a punk band that could cover one of your songs that, band from back in the day that you'd be like, this would be great. Some great Fugazi covers of Waiting Room, by the way.
If Fugazi got back together and decided they were going to cover one of our songs to do that, that would be sort of mind-blowing. Like, guys, okay, we haven't been a real working band for a while, but we got to do this. Like,
that'd be amazing.
I'm not holding my breath. I'm really not.
Well, I'm excited to come see you guys tonight. I'm looking forward to it. Check the band out on tour for sure. I appreciate you coming in, Jim, and hope to do this again soon.
Yeah, thanks a
New
lot for
music
having
coming
me.
up, by the way?
You never clock out of this gig, so sure.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.